Good evening. Tonight I'm going to read from the Red Book by C.G. Jung, Reader's Edition, pages 347 to 361. And this is a section called Nox Tertia, meaning the third night. And this part of the book refers to the divine child, so that's why I put that in the title. And just before I begin that, I just want to read one footnote from yesterday, which I might not have read. And this is from the previous paragraph, or two paragraphs above. He says, "You must finally understand your purpose in explaining away, namely to seek protection." And the footnote reads, "You employ old word magic to protect yourself through superstition, for you are still a powerless child of the old wood. But we can see behind your word magic, and it is rendered feeble, and nothing protects you against the chaos other than that acceptance." And so the reason I mention that is we often see people who blame other people for their sins, and this is the word magic to which Dr. Jung is referring. Nox Tertia. My soul spoke to me in a whisper, urgently and alarmingly. Words, words. Do not make too many words. Be silent and listen. Have you recognized your madness, and do you admit it? Have you noticed that all your foundations are completely mired in madness? Do you not want to recognize your madness and welcome it in a friendly manner? I'll read that sentence together. Do you not want to recognize your madness and welcome it in a friendly manner? You wanted to accept everything, so accept madness too. Let the light of your madness shine, and it will suddenly dawn on you. Madness is not to be despised and not to be feared, but instead you should give it life. Your words are hard. Your words are hard, and the task you set me is difficult. Soul. If you want to find paths, you should also not spurn madness, since it makes up such a great part of your nature. I didn't know that this is so. Soul. Be glad that you can recognize it, for you will thus avoid becoming its victim. Madness is a special form of the spirit and clings to all teachings and philosophies, but even more to daily life, since life itself is full of craziness and at bottom utterly illogical. Man strives toward reason only so that he can make rules for himself. Life itself has no rules. That is the mystery and its unknown law. What you call knowledge is an attempt to impose something comprehensible on life. That all sounds very desolate, but nevertheless it prompts me to disagree. Soul. You have nothing to disagree with. You are the madhouse. I'll read that again. Okay, so Dr. Jung said, that all sounds very desolate, but nevertheless it prompts me to disagree. Soul, you have nothing to disagree with. You are in the madhouse. There stands the fat little professor. Had he spoken this way, and had I taken him for my soul, Professor, yes, my dear, you are confused. Your speech is completely incoherent. I too believe that I too believe that I've completely lost myself, and I really am crazy. It's all terribly confusing. Professor, have patience, everything will work out. Anyway, sleep well. Thank you, but I'm afraid. Everything inside me is in utter disarray. Matters are becoming serious and chaos is approaching. Is this the ultimate bottom? Is chaos also a foundation? If only there weren't these terrible waves. Everything breaks asunder like black billows. Yes, I see that. Yes, I see and understand. It is the ocean, the almighty nocturnal tide. A ship moves there, a large steamer. I'm just about to enter the smoking parlor. Many people, beautiful clothes. They all look at me astonished. Someone comes up to me and says, "What's the matter? You look just like a ghost. What happened?" I, Nothing. That is, I believe that I have gone crazy. The floor sways, everything moves. Someone, the sea is somewhat rough this evening. That's all. The sea is somewhat rough this evening. That's all. Have a hot toddy. You're seasick. I, You're right. I am seasick, but in a special way. I'm really in a madhouse. Someone, well, well now, you're joking again. Life is returning. I, Do you call that wit? Just now the professor pronounced me truly and utterly mad. The fat little professor is actually sitting at a green covered table playing cards. He turns he turns toward me when he turns toward me when he hears me speak and laughs. Well, where did you get to? Come here. Would you like a drink too? You're quite a character, I must say. You've put all of the ladies in quite a flurry this evening. Professor, for me, this is no longer a joke. Just now I was your patient. The parlor erupts in unbridled laughter. Professor, I hope that I haven't upset you too much. Well, to be committed is no small matter. The person to whom I have been speaking before suddenly comes up to me and looks me in the face. He is a man with a black beard, a tousled head of hair, and dark, shining eyes. He speaks to me vehemently. Something worse happened to me. It's 5 years now that I've been here. I realize that this is my neighbor, who has apparently awakened from his apathy and is now sitting on my bed. He goes on speaking fiercely and urgently. But I am Nietzsche, only rebaptized. I am also Christ, the Savior, and appointed to save the world, but they won't let me. Who won't let you? The fool. The devil. We are in hell, but of course you haven't noticed it yet. I didn't realize until the second year of my time here that the director is the devil. You mean the professor? That sounds incredible. The fool. You're an ignoramus. I was supposed to marry the mother of God long ago, but the professor, that devil, has her in his power. Every evening when the sun goes down, he gets her with child. In the morning before sunrise, she gives birth to it. Then all the devils come together and kill the child in a gruesome manner. I distinctly hear his cries. Okay, I have to share with you an image here. Is this the one? I believe this is the image. that is being referred to here. I, but what have you told me is what you have told me is pure mythology. The fool, you're crazy and understand nothing. You belong to the madhouse. My God, family always shut me in with crazy people. I'm supposed to save the world. I'm the savior. He lies down again and sinks back into his lassitude. I clutch the sides of my bed to protect myself against the terrible waves. I stare at the wall so that I can at least latch onto something with my eyes. The horizontal line runs along the wall, which is painted a darker color beneath. A radiator stands in front of it. It is a railing, and I can see the sea beyond it. The line is the horizon, and there the sun now rises in red glory, solitary and magnificent. In it is a cross from which a serpent hangs. Or is it a bull slit open, as at the slaughterhouse? Or is it an ass? I suppose it is really a ram with a crown of thorns, or is it the crucified one myself? The sun of martyrdom has arisen and is pouring bloody rays over the sea. This spectacle lasts a long time. The sun rises higher, its rays grow brighter and hotter, and the sun burns down white on a blue sea. The swell has subsided. A charitable and quiet summer dawn lies on the shimmering sea. The salty smell of water rises up. A faint, wide surf breaks on the land with a dull thunder and returns incessantly, 12 times the strokes of the world clock. The 12th hour is complete, and now silence enters. No noise, no breeze. Everything is rigid and deathly still. I wait, secretly anxious. I see a tree arise from the sea. Its crown reaches to heaven, and its roots reach down into hell. I am completely alone and disheartened, and gaze from afar. It is as if all life had flown from me and completely passed into the incomprehensible and fearful. I am utterly weak and incapable. Salvation, I whisper. A strange voice speaks. There is no salvation here. You must remain calm or you will disturb the others. It is night and the other people want to sleep. I see, it's the attendant. The room is dimly lit by a weak lamp, and sadness weighs on the room. I couldn't find the way. He says, you don't need to find a way now. He speaks the truth. The way, or whatever it might be, on which people go is our way, the right way. There are no paved ways. There are no paved ways into the future. We say that it is this way, and it is. We build roads by going on. Our life is the truth that we seek. Only my life is the truth above all. We create the truth by living it. This is the night in which all the dams broke, where what was previously solid moved, where the stones turned into serpents, and everything living froze. Is this a web of words? If it is a hellish web for those caught in it. There are hellish webs of words, only words. But what are words? Be tentative with words, value them well. Take safe words, words without catches. Do not spin them with one another so that no webs arise, for you are the first who is ensnared in them. For words have meanings. With words you pull up the underworld. Word, the paltriest and the mightiest. In words, the emptiness and the fullness flow together. Hence, the Word is an image of God. The Word is the greatest and the smallest that man created, just as what is created through man is the greatest and the smallest. So if I fall prey to the web of words, I fall prey to the greatest and the smallest. I am at the mercy of the sea, of the inchoate waves that are forever changing place. Their essence is movement, and movement is their order. He who strives against waves is exposed to the arbitrary. The work of men is steady, but it swims upon chaos. The striving of men seems like lunacy to him who the striving of men seems like lunacy to him who comes from the sea, but men consider him mad. He who comes from the sea is sick. He can hardly bear the gaze of men, for to him they all seem to be drunk and foolish from sleep in for him they all seem to be drunk and foolish from sleep-inducing poisons. They want to come to your rescue, and as for accepting help, for sure you would like less of that, rather than swindling your way into their company and being completely like one who has never seen the chaos but only talk about it. But for him who has seen the chaos, there is no more hiding, because he knows that the bottom sways and knows what the swaying means. He has seen the order and the disorder of the endless. He knows the unlawful laws. He knows the sea and can never forget it. The chaos is terrible, days full of lead, nights full of horror. But just as Christ knew that he was the way, the truth, and the life, in that the new torment and the renewed salvation came into the world through him. I know that chaos must come over men, and that the hands of those who unknowingly and unsuspectingly break through the thin walls that separate us from the sea are busy, for this is our way, our truth, and our life. Just as the disciples of Christ recognized that God had become flesh and lived among them as a man, we now recognize that the anointed of this time is a God who does not appear in the flesh. He is no man and yet is a son of man, but in spirit and not in flesh. Hence, he can be born only through the spirit of men as the conceiving womb of the God. What is done to this God, you do to your lowest in yourself, under the law of love, according to which nothing is cast out. For how else should your lowest be saved depravity? Who should accept the lower in you if you do not? Who should accept the lower in you if you do not? But he who does it not from love, but from pride, selfishness, and greed is damned. None of the damnation is cast out either. If you accept the lowest in you, suffering is unavoidable, since you do the base thing and build up what lay in ruin. There are many graves and corpses in us, an evil stench of decomposition. Just as Christ, through the torment of sanctification, subjugated the flesh, so the God of this time, through the torment of sanctification, will subjugate the spirit. Just as Christ tormented the flesh through the spirit, the God of this time will torment the spirit through the flesh. For our spirit has become an impertinent whore, a slave to words created by men and no longer the divine word itself. The lowest in you is the source of mercy. We take this sickness upon ourselves, the inability to find peace, the baseness and the contemptibility so that the God can be healed and radiantly ascend, purged of the decomposition of death and the mud of the underworld. The despicable prisoner will ascend to his salvation, shining and wholly healed. Is there a suffering that the world is there a suffering that would be too great to want to undergo for our God? You only see the one and do not notice the other. But when there is one, so there is also another, and that is the lowest in you. But the lowest in you is also the eye of the evil that stares at you and looks at you coldly and sucks your light down into the dark abyss. Bless the hand that keeps you up there, the smallest humanity, the lowest living thing. Quite a few would prefer death. Since Christ imposed bloody sacrifice on humanity, the renewed God will also not spare bloodshed. Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments like him that treadeth in the wine fat? I have trodden the winepress alone, and no one is with me. I have trodden myself down in my anger and trampled upon myself in my fury. Hence my blood has spattered on my clothes, and I have stained my robe. For I have afforded myself a day of vengeance, and the year to redeem myself has come. And I looked around, and there was none to help. And I wondered that there was no one who stood by me. Therefore my own arm must save me, and my fury upheld me. And I trod myself down in my rage, and made myself drunk in my fury, and spilt my blood on the earth. For I took my misdeed upon myself, so that the God would be healed. Just as Christ said that he did not come to make peace, but brought a sword, so he in whom Christ becomes complete will not give himself peace, but a sword. He will rebel against himself, and one will be turned against the other in him. He will also hate that which he loves in himself. He will be castigated in himself, mocked, and given over to the torment of crucifixion, and no one will aid him or soothe his torment. Just as Christ was crucified between the two thieves, our lowest lies on either side of our way. And just as one thief went to hell and the other rose up to heaven, the lowest in us will be sundered in two halves on the day of our judgment. The one is destined for damnation and death, the other will rise up. But it will take a long time until you see what is destined for death and what is destined for life, since the lowest in you is still unseparated and one and in a deep sleep. If I accept the lowest in me, I lower a seed into the ground of hell. The seed is invisibly small, but the tree of my life grows from it and conjoins the below with the above. At both ends there is fire and blazing embers. The above is fiery and the below is fiery. Between the unbearable fire grows your life. You hang between these poles. In the immeasurably frightening movement, the stretched hanging welters up and down. We thus fear our lowest, since that which one does not possess is forever united with the chaos and takes part in its mysteries, ebb and flow. Insofar as I accept the lowest in me, precisely that red glowing sun of the depths, and thus fall victim to the confusion of chaos, the upper shining sun also rises. Therefore, he who strives for the highest finds the deepest. Hi, Mama. I'm going to continue. I'll finish this. I still have another 4 pages. I agree with you, though, by the way. To deliver the men of this time from this stretched hanging, Christ effectively took this torment upon himself and taught them, be crafty like serpents and guileless like doves. For craftiness counsels against chaos, and guilelessness veils its terrible aspect. Thus men could take the safe middle path, hedged both upward and downward. But the dead of the above and the below mounted, and their demands grew ever louder, and both the noble and the wicked rose up again and unaware broke the law of the mediator. They flung open doors above and below. They drew many after them to higher and lower madness, thereby sowing confusion and preparing the way of what is to come. But he who goes into the one and not also at the same time into the other, by accepting what comes toward him, will simply teach and live the one and turn it into a reality, for he will be its victim. When you go into the one and hence consider the other approaching you as your enemy, you will fight against the other. You will do so because you fail to recognize that the other is also in you. On the contrary, you think that the other comes somehow from without, and you think that you also catch sight of it in the views and actions of your fellow men, which clash with yours. You thus fight the other and are completely blinded. But he who accepts what approaches, because it is also in him, quarrels and wrangles no more, but looks into himself and keeps silent. I'll give you the image that goes with this. This is the image of the divine child. Okay, I'll just read that once again. But he who accepts what approaches him, because it is also in him, quarrels and wrangles no more, but looks into himself and keeps silent. He sees the tree of life whose roots reach into hell and whose top touches heaven. He also no longer knows differences: who is right, what is holy, what is genuine, what is good, what is correct. He knows only one difference, the difference between below and above. For he sees the trees of life grows from below to above, and that it has its crown at the top, clearly differentiated from the roots. To him, this is unquestionable. Hence, he knows the way to salvation. To unlearn all distinctions, save that concerning direction, is part of your salvation. Hence, you free yourself from the old curse of the knowledge of good and evil, because you separated good from evil according to your best appraisal and aspired only to the good and denied the evil that you committed nevertheless, and failed to accept your roots no longer suckled the dark nourishment of the depths, and your tree became sick and withered. Therefore the ancients said that after Adam had eaten the apple, the tree of paradise withered. Your life needs the dark, but if you know that it is evil, you can no longer accept it, and you suffer anguish, and you do not know why, nor can you accept it as evil, else your good will reject you. Nor can you deny it, since you know good and evil. Because of this, the knowledge of good and evil was an insurmountable curse. Just come back to you now. But if you return to primal chaos, and if you feel and recognize that which hangs stretched between the two unbearable poles of fire, you will notice that you can no longer separate good and evil conclusively, neither through feeling nor through knowledge, but that you can discern the direction of growth only from below or to above. You thus forget the distinction between good and evil, and you no longer know it as long as your tree grows from below to above. But as soon as growth stops, what was united in growth falls apart, and once more you recognize good and evil. You can never deny your knowledge of good and evil to yourself, so that you could betray your good in order to live evil. For as soon as you separate good and evil, you recognize them. They are united only in growth, but you grow if you stand still in the greatest doubt, and therefore steadfastness in great doubt is a veritable flower of life. He who cannot bear doubt does not bear himself. Such a one is doubtful. He does not grow, and hence he does not live. Doubt is the sign of the strongest and the weakest. The strong have doubt, but doubt has the weak. Therefore, the weakest is close to the strongest, and if he can say to his doubt, I have you, then he is the stronger. But no one can say yes to his doubt unless he endures wide open chaos, because there are so many among us who can talk about anything. Pay heed to what they live. What someone says can be very much or very little. Thus, examine his life. My speech is neither light nor dark, since it is the speech of someone who is growing. Okay, that's the end of the passage. And Mama says the divine child is an Oompa Loompa. Totally makes sense. The love doctor, I agree. The love doctor says, yes, the strange image he created. I wonder, is the face was one of a woman he was in love with? That would I know? I don't know. It might well be a woman he was in love with, very possibly. Now, there are some very long footnotes for this section, so I'm going to continue on and read the footnotes. So Nox Tertia means the third night, and the date is January the 18th, 1914, keeping in mind that the visions of the Red Book began on December 12th, 1913, only about 5 weeks earlier, and this is 7 months before the beginning of World War I. So that's an important fact here. Now, so on page 350, I'm reading from the Red Book by C.G. Jung, the Reader's Edition, and I'm reading the footnotes for Nox Tertia. And so I'm going to read the text passage and then the footnote so that you can follow along. The text reads, "The fool, you're an ignoramus. I was supposed to marry the mother of God long ago." And the footnote reads, "In the relations between the I and the unconscious, Jung refers to a case of a man with paranoid dementia he encountered during his time at the Bergholzli, who was in telephone communication with the Mother of God." This is in Collected Works 7, paragraph 229. And then the text goes on. And this relates to this image number 9 again, so 109 again. So let me give you that. So this footnote relates to this image. "Then all the devils come together and kill the child in a gruesome manner. I distinctly hear their cries. And so then this is where this image is to be in the text. And a little bit further, and so the footnote reads, image legend, this is the legend to this image. This man of matter rises up too far in the world of the spirit. There the spirit bores through his heart with the golden ray. He falls with joy and disintegrates. The serpent, who is the evil one, could not remain in the world of the spirit. Okay. So that was the... And then the text reads, this spectacle lasts a long time. The sun rises higher. Its rays grow brighter. And the footnote reads, Jung's marginal note to the calligraphic volume, which is dated March 22nd, 1919. This seems to refer to when this passage was transcribed into the calligraphic volume. Then on page 351, the text reads, the salty smell of water rises up. A faint, wide surf breaks on the sand with a dull thunder and returns incessantly 12 times, the strokes of the world clock. And the footnote reads, in Psychology and Religion, 1938, Jung commented on the symbolism of the world clock. Collected Works 11, paragraph 110 and following. And then the text reads, a strange voice speaks. There is no salvation here. You must remain calm or you will disturb the others. And the footnote reads, in Dante's Commedia, the following lines are inscribed over the gates of hell. Abandon every hope, you who enter. Canto 3, line 9, the Divine Comedy of Dante Alighieri. And then another text passage. There are hellish webs of words, only words, but what are words? Be tentative with words, value them well. Take safe words, words without catches. Do not spin them with one another so that no webs arise, for you are the first who is ensnared in them. And the footnote reads, the draft continues, for words are not merely words, but have meaning for which they are set. They attract those meanings like demons' shadows. Okay. Then on page 352, the text reads, the striving of men seems like lunacy to him who comes from the sea, but men consider him mad. And the footnote reads, the draft continues, once you have seen the chaos, look at your face. You saw more than death and the grave. You saw beyond, and your face bears the mark of one who has seen chaos, and yet was a man. Many cross over, but they do not see the chaos. However, the chaos sees them, stares at them, and imprints on its features on them, and they are marked forever. Call such a one mad, for that is what he is. He has become a wave and has lost his human side, his constancy. Cheery. And, okay, next text sentence. But just as Christ knew that he was the way, the truth, and the life, in that the new torment and the renewed salvation came into the world through him. And the footnote reads, the preceding sentence is crossed out in the corrected draft, and Jung has written in margin Philemon's identification. So Philemon is this guru that Dr. Jung had in his active imaginations, and so when he's referring to him in here, he's referring to Philemon. Okay, so let me read it I'll read the text once more so you can understand now from that context. But just as Christ knew that he was the way, the truth, and the life, in that the new torment and the renewed salvation came into the world through him. And so this is Philemon now. Okay. All right, here's the text. Just as the disciples of Christ recognized that God had become flesh and lived among them as a man, we now recognize that the anointed of this time is a God who does not appear in the flesh. He is no man, and yet is the Son of Man, but in spirit and not in flesh. Hence, he can be born only through the spirit of men as the conceiving womb of the God. And the footnote reads, Jung elaborated on this issue many years later in Answer to Job, 1952, where he studied the historical transformation of Judeo-Christian God images. A major theme in this, the continued incarnation of God after Christ. Commenting on the book of Revelation, Jung argued that ever since John the Apocalyptist experienced for the first time, perhaps unconsciously, the conflict into which Christianity inevitably leads mankind is burdened with this. God wanted and wants to become man. Collected Works 11, paragraph 739. In Jung's view, there was a direct link between John's views and Eckart's views. Quote, this disturbing invasion engendered in him the image of the divine consort, whose image lives in every man, of the child whom Meister Eckhart also saw in the visions. It was he who knew that God alone is his Godhead, is not in a state of bliss, but it is he who knew that God alone in his Godhead is not in a state of bliss, but must be born in the human soul. The incarnation in Christ is the prototype, which is continually being transferred to the creature by the Holy Ghost. Collected Works 11, paragraph 741. In contemporary times, Jung gave great importance to the papal bull of the Sumptio Maria. He held that it points to the hierosgamos in the pleroma, and this in turn implies, as we have said, the future birth of the divine child, who, in accordance with the divine trend toward incarnation, will choose as his birthplace the empirical man. This metaphysical process is known as the individuation process in the psychology of the unconscious. Collected Works 11, paragraph 755. Through being identified with the continued incarnation of God in the soul, the process of individuation found its ultimate significance. On May 3rd, 1958, Jung wrote to Martin Kelsey, quote, the real history of the world seems to be the progressive incarnation of the deity. That's from Letters 2, volume 2 of Letters of C.G. Jung, page 436. And that letter also appears in Edward Endangers' book, The New God Image, here. And some have criticized, and I have criticized, that this has been hidden by Jungian analysts for a century. It's very deeply buried in Dr. Jung's work. Okay, moving on. For how else should your lowest be saved from depravity? And then the footnote, it refers to image 111. So let me give you that image. Okay, so the image legend reads, the serpent fell dead onto the earth, and that was the umbilical cord of a new birth. The serpent is similar to the serpent in image 109. In Black Book 7 on January the 27th, 1922, Jung's soul refers to images 109 and 111. This is 111 that you're seeing right now. His soul says, the giant cloud of eternal night is awful. I see a yellow shining stroke in the cloud from the top left-hand corner to the irregular shape of a streak of lightning. And behind it, I guess we better look at the other one for a moment here. Okay, so back to image 109. Okay. Okay, the serpent is similar to the serpent in image 109. In the Black Book 7 on January 27th, 1922, Jung's soul refers to images 109 and 111. His soul says, the giant cloud of eternal night is awful. I see a yellow shining stroke on this cloud from the top left-hand corner to the irregular shape, in the irregular shape of a streak of lightning. And behind it, an interminable reddish light in the cloud. It does not move. I see a dead black serpent lying beneath the cloud and the lightning. It does not move. Beneath the cloud, I see a dead black serpent and the thunderbolt stuck in its head like a spear. A hand as large as that of a god has thrown the spear, and everything has frozen to a gloomy image. What is it trying to say? Do you recall that image that you painted years ago, the one in which the black and the red man with the black and white serpent is struck by the ray of God, i.e. image 109? This image seems to follow that one, because afterward you also painted the dead serpent, image 111. Once more, I'll give you image 111. So the image seems to follow that one, because afterward you painted the dead serpent, image 111, and did you not behold a gloomy image this morning of that man in the white robe and a black face like a mummy? How now? What is this supposed to mean, soul? It is an image of yourself. Okay, so that's the end of that footnote. I'm on page 354. And the text reads, none of the damnation is cast out either. And the footnote reads, the draft continues, But who does this under the law of love will move beyond suffering, sit at the table with the anointed, and behold God's glory. Text reads, there are many graves and corpses in us, an evil stench of decomposition. And the footnote reads, the draft continues, but God will come to those who take their suffering upon themselves under the law of love, and he will establish a new bond with them. For it is predicted that the anointed is supposed to return, but no longer in the flesh, but in the spirit. And just as Christ guided the flesh upward through the torment of salvation, the anointed of this time will guide the spirit upward through the torment of salvation. And then text reads, for our spirit has become an impertinent whore, a slave to words created by men, and no longer the divine word itself. And the footnote reads, the draft continues, the lowest in you is the stone that the builders discarded. It will become the cornerstone. The lowest in you will grow with a grain of rice from dry soil, shooting up from the sand of the most barren desert, and rise and stand very tall. Salvation comes to you from the discarded. Your sin will rise from muddy swamps. Like all others, you are annoyed at the lowest in you because its guise is uglier than the image of yourself that you love. The lowest in you is the most despised and least valued, full of pain and sickness. He is despised so much that one hides one's face from him, that he is held in no respect whatsoever, and it is even said that he does not exist because one is ashamed for his sake and despises oneself. In truth, it carries our sickness and is ridden with our pain. We consider him the one who is plagued and punished by God on account of his despicable ugliness. But he is wounded and exposed to madness. For the sake of our own justice, he is crucified and suppressed for the sake of our own beauty. We leave him to punishment and martyrdom that we might have peace. But we will take his sickness upon ourselves, and salvation will come to us through our own wounds. The first lines refer to Psalm 118, verse 22. The passage echoes Isaiah 53, which Jung cited above. And then let's see how long this is. This is a long one. Okay. The text reads, the despicable prisoner will ascend to his salvation, shining and wholly healed. And the footnote reads, the draft continues, why should our spirit not take upon itself torment and restlessness for the sake of sanctification? But I'll read that sentence again. Why should our spirit not take upon itself torment and restlessness for the sake of sanctification? But all this will come over you, for I already hear the steps of those who bear the keys to open the gates of the depths, the valleys and the mountains that resound with the noise of battles, the lamentation arising from innumerable inhabited sites is the omen of what is to come. My visions are truth, for I have beheld what is to come, but you are not supposed to believe me, because otherwise you will stray from your path, the right one that leads you safely to your suffering that I have seen ahead. May no faith mislead you except your utmost unbelief. It guides you on your way. Accept your betrayal and infidelity, your arrogance and your better knowledge, and you will reach the safe and secure route that leads you to your lowest. And what you do to your lowest, you will do to the anointed. Do not forget this. Nothing of the law of love is abrogated, but much has been added to it. Cursed unto himself is he who kills the one capable of love in himself. For the horde of the dead who died for the sake of love is immeasurable, and the mightiest among these dead is Christ, Lord. Holding these dead in reverence is wisdom. Purgatory awaits those who murder the one who is capable. Purgatory awaits those who murder the one in themselves who is capable of love. You will lament and rave against the impossibility of uniting the lowest in you and the law of those who love. I say to you, just as Christ subjugated the nature of the physical to the spirit under the law of the word of the Father, the nature of the spirit shall be subjugated to the physical under the law of Christ's completed work of salvation through love. You are afraid of the danger, but know that where God is nearest, the danger is greatest. How can you recognize the anointed one without any danger? Will one ever acquire a precious stone with a copper coin? The lowest in you is what endangers you. Fear and doubt guard the gates of your way. The lowest in you is the unforeseeable, for you cannot see it. Thus shape and behold it. You will thus open the floodgates of chaos. The sun arises from the darkest, dampest, and coldest. The unknowing people of this time only see the one. They never see the other approaching them. But if the one exists, so does the other. Jung here implicitly cites the opening lines of Friedrich Holderlin's Patmos. It's a poem entitled Patmos by Friedrich Holderlin, which was one of his favorite poems. Quote, near is the God and hard to grasp, but where danger is, salvation also grows. Jung discussed this in Transformations and Symbols of the Libido, Collected Works 5, paragraph 651. That's from, the reference here is actually to Psychology of the Unconscious, which was converted into Collected Works 5 later on, 40 years later. Okay, now the text reads, and I tried myself down in my rage and made myself drunk in my fury and spilt my blood on the earth. And the footnote reads, these lines actually cite Isaiah 63, 2 through 6. And then the text reads, just as Christ said that he did not come to make peace, but brought a sword. The footnote reads, Matthew 10, 34. Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. And the text reads, the one is destined for damnation and death. The other will rise up. And the footnote reads, in answer to Job 1952, Jung wrote of Christ on the cross. This picture is completed by the two thieves, one whom goes down to hell, the other into paradise. One could hardly imagine a better representation of the oppositeness of the central Christian symbol. Collected Works 11, paragraph 659. So that's also answer to Job. That's in answer to Job, paragraph 659, because answer to Job is paragraphs 553 to 758 of Collected Works 11. Okay, the text reads, in an immeasurably frightening movement, the stretched hanging welters up and down. And the footnote reads, Dietrich notes that in Plato's Gorgias, There is the motif that transgressors hang in Hades. In Jung's list of reference at the back of his copy of Nicaea, he noted 117 hanging. And then the text reads, to deliver the men of his time from the stretched hanging, Christ effectively took this torment upon himself and taught them, be crafty like serpents and guileless like doves. And the footnote reads, Matthew 10:16, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And then, let's see, there's one more footnote, or no, a couple more, but this next footnote is quite long, and it relates to image 113. So let me give you that image back. Just a moment. Okay, this is the image of the divine child. And okay, so the text reads, be he who accepts what approaches him, because it is also in him, quarrels and wrangles no more, but looks into himself and keeps silent. And the footnote reads, image legend. This is the image of the divine child. It means the completion of a long path. Just as the image was finished in April 1919, the work on the next image had already begun. The one who brought the image as Philemon has predicted to me. I called him Phanes because he is the newly appeared God. He may be the astrological sign for the sun. In the Orphic theogony, Aether and Chaos are born from Kronos. Kronos makes an egg in Aether, and the egg splits into two, and Phanes, the first of the gods, appears. Guthrie writes that he is imagined as marvelously beautiful, a figure of shining light, with golden wings on his shoulders, 4 eyes, and the heads of various animals. He is of both sexes, since he is to create the race of the gods unaided. And that's from Orpheus and the Greek Religion, a study of the Orphic movement. In Transformation of Symbols of the Libido, 1912, in English it's called Psychology of the Unconscious, while discussing mythological conceptions of creative force, Jung drew attention to the Orphic figure of Phanes, the shining one, the firstborn, the father of Eros. In Orphic terms, Phanes also denotes Priapus, a god of love, androgynous and equal to the Theban Dionysus, Lysios. The Orphic meaning of Phanes is the same as that of Indian Kama, the god of love, which is also a cosmogonic principle. From the same book, paragraph 222. Phanes appears in Black Book 6 in the autumn of 1916. His attributes match the classical depictions, and he is described as the brilliant one, a god of beauty and light. Jung's copy of Isaac Corey's ancient fragments of the Phoenician, Chaldean, Egyptian, Trinian, Carthaginian, Indian, Persian, and other writers, with an introductory dissertation and inquiry into the philosophy and trinity of the ancients, has underlinings in the section containing the Orphic theogony, and a slip of paper and mark by the following statement, quote, they imagine as the god a conceiving and conceived egg, or a white garment, or a cloud, because Phanes springs forth from these. Phanes is Jung's god. On September 28, 1916, Phanes is described as a golden bird. On February 20th, 1917, Jung addresses Phanes as the messenger of Abraxas. On May 20th, 1917, Philemon says that he will become Phanes. On September 11th, Philemon describes him as follows, quote, Phanes is the god who a gleam from the waters. Phanes is the smile of dawn. Phanes is the resplendent day. He is the immortal present. He is the gushing streams. He is the soughing wind. He is the immortal present. He is the gushing streams. He is hunger and satiation. He is love and lust. He is mourning and consolation. He is promise and fulfillment. He is the light that illuminates every darkness. He is the eternal day. He is the silver light of the moon. He is the flickering stars. He is the shooting star that flashes and falls and lapses. He is the stream of the shooting stars that returns every year. He is the returning sun and moon. He is the trailing star that He is the trailing star that brings wars and noble wine. He is the good and fullness of the whisper. He is the warmth of friendship. He is the hope that enlivens the void. He is the magnificence of all renewed suns. He is the joy at every birth. He is the blooming flowers. He is the velvety butterfly's wing. He is the scent of blooming gardens that fills the nights. He is the song of joy. He is the tree of light. He is the perfection, everything done better. He is everything euphonious. He is the well measured. He is the sacred number. He is the promise of life. He is the contract and the sacred pledge. He is the diversity of sounds and colors. He is the sanctification of morning, noon, and evening. He is the benevolent and the gentle. He is the salvation. In truth, Phanes is the happy day. In truth, Phanes' work and its accomplishment and its remuneration. He is the troublesome task and the evening calm. He is the step on the middle way. He is the beginning, its middle, and its end. He is foresight. He is the end of fear. He is the sprouting seed of the opening bud. He is the gate of reception, of acceptance and deposition. He is the spring and the desert. He is the safe haven and the stormy night. He is the certainty in desperation. He is the solid in dissolution. He is the liberation from imprisonment. He is counsel and strength in advancement. He is the friend of man, the light emanating from man, the bright glow that man beholds on his path. He is the greatness of man, his worth and his force. On July 31, 1918, Phanes himself says, the mystery of the summer morning, the happy day, the completion of the moment, the fullness of the possible, born from suffering and joy, the treasure of eternal beauty, the goal of the four paths, the spring and the ocean of the four streams, the fulfillment and the four sufferings, and of the four joys, father and mother of the gods, of the four winds, crucifixion, burial, resurrection, and man's divine enhancement, highest effect and non-being, goal, world and grain, eternity and instance, poverty and abundance, evolution, death, and the rebirth of God, born by eternally creative power, resplendent in eternal effect, loved by the two mothers and sisterly wives, ineffable pain, ridden ineffable pain-ridden bliss, unknowable, unrecognizable, a hair's breadth between life and death, a river of worlds canopying the heavens. I give you philanthropy, the opal jug of water. He pours water and wine and milk and blood, food for men and gods. I give you the joy of suffering and the suffering of joy. I give you what has been found, the constancy in change and the change in constancy. The jug made of stone, the vessel of completion. Water flowed in, wine flowed in, milk flowed in, blood flowed in. The four winds precipitated into the precious vessel. The gods of the four heavenly realms hold its curvature. The two mothers and the two fathers guard it. The fire of the north burns above its mouth. The serpent of the south encircles its bottom. The spirit of the east holds one of its sides, and the serpent of the west the other. Forever denied, it exists forever, recurring in all forms, forever the same. This one precious vessel, surrounded by the circle of animals, denying itself and arising in new splendor through its self-denial. The heart of God and of man, it is the one and the many, a path leading across mountains and valleys, a guiding star on the oceans, in you and always ahead of you. Perfected indeed, truly perfected is he who knows this. Perfection is poverty, but poverty means gratitude. Gratitude is love. 2 August. In truth, perfection is sacrifice. Perfection is joy and anticipation of the shadow. Perfection is the end. The end means the beginning, and hence perfection is both smallness and the smallest possible beginning. Everything is imperfect, and perfection is hence solitude. But solitude seeks community. Hence, perfection means community. I am perfection, but perfected is only he who has attained his limits. I am the eternal light, but perfect is he who stands between day and night. I am eternal love, but perfect is he who has placed the sacrificial knife beside him, beside his love. I am beauty, but perfect is he who sits against the temple wall and mends shoes for money. He who is perfect is simple, solitary, and unanimous. Hence he seeks diversity, community, ambiguity. Through diversity, community, and ambiguity, he advances toward simplicity, solitude, and unanimousness. He who is perfect knows suffering and joy, but I am the bliss beyond joy and suffering. He who is perfect knows light and dark, but I am the light beyond day and darkness. He who is perfect knows up and down, but I am the height beyond high and low. He who is perfect knows the creating and the created, but I am the parturient image beyond creation and creature. He who is perfect knows love and being loved, but I am the love beyond embrace and mourning. He who is perfect knows male and female, but I am the one, his father and son, beyond masculine child and the aged. He who is perfect knows rise and fall, but I am the center beyond dawn and dusk. He who is perfect knows me. This is different from Black Book 7, pages 76 to 80. Wow, that's quite beautiful, isn't it? Okay, just 3 more brief footnotes here. I guess I still have some people watching, amazingly. Okay. So the text reads on page 360, he also no longer knows differences. And the footnote reads, Jung's marginal note to the calligraphic volume. So this was, and the marginal note is September 14th, 1922. And so he wrote that he also no longer knows differences at that point, 1922. And the last footnote, I guess it's the last, no, one more. Therefore, the ancients said after Adam had eaten the apple, the tree of paradise withered. And the footnote reads, in Transformations and Symbols of the Libido, 1912, Jung referred to a legend in which the tree that had withered after the fall. And that's in paragraph 375. And that book is called Psychology of the Unconscious in English. And now one more footnote. Therefore, the weakest is close to the strongest, and if he can say to his doubt, I have you, then he is the strongest. And the footnote reads, the draft continues, hence Christ taught, blessed be ye poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. This refers to Luke 6:20. Okay. So that is the completion of Nox Tertia. That was quite a complex reading, and I must get on with my physical life now. But I'll quickly look at your comments. It seems we've had some activity. I'm only going to read the ones that are particularly appropriate. Love Doctor says, yes, the strange image he created, I wondered in the face was one of a woman he was in love with that what I know. And Nicholas says, like a gremlin, perhaps they multiply via water. Mama says it's a very different take on the fool. So amazing, right? Yes. And then she goes on, flashes his words out completely to read the footnotes. Really smart. And Nicholas Chan says, Peter Kingsley mentioned Phanes being Jung's god, and Phanes seems an analog to the primal sun gods in other cultures, above firm and exchange between Kingsley and Murray Stein. Opal says, very beautiful, and I agree with that. And Mama says, yes, very beautiful, like a formula to end suffering through knowing suffering completely. And Nicholas says, thanks, and I thank you for sticking with me. And now I'm having the door next to me open, so it's time to call this to a halt. Thank you for joining me tonight, and I'll look forward to reading Nox Tertia tomorrow. Thank you for joining me tonight.